They have apologized to the Jewish people. They marched 6 million Jewish people into gas chambers. And that was also illegal because the German government, the government of Adolf Hitler, also made that legal. But you cannot commit a crime and then say that in your country you have made it legal, because the world has known that slavery and the genocide have always been crimes, and therefore this matter has to be addressed. The conference at Durban in 2001 was a moment that all of us should never forget. We were in Durban in South Africa demanding justice. The governments of Europe took two important positions. One, we will not apologize for slavery. Slavery was legal, and furthermore, it happened a long time ago. And this was their position. This is a long time ago, and we are not going to reopen that old history. It was a long time ago. But you know that the 250 years of slavery, and in the wider context, the 400 years of slavery in the Caribbean, Africa, was followed by another 100 years of apartheid. When were the Jamaican people able to vote universal adult suffrage, one man, one vote? 1940s. Slavery is abolished, 1830s. It's another 100 years before each of you could stand up and vote. So slavery goes, apartheid comes in. Another 100 years, an extension of slavery by another name. So it wasn't a long time ago, because I can remember my parents talking about their inability to vote in their own country. Could not vote in their own country. And I can tell you this. As you know, I'm a cricketer. I love cricket. I love cricket. And many of you have heard of the 3 W's. Probably the 3 greatest batsmen we've ever had. I don't know. People say that. But, okay. But when the 3 W's were considered the 3 finest batsmen of their time, they could not vote in their own country. So they were playing cricket for the West Indies. They were global champions, but they could not vote. George Headley, the great Miles Headley, could not vote in Jamaica. When he was the best cricketer in the world, he could not vote in Jamaica because he was a descendant of these people. Slavery, then apartheid. And what were the arguments that Britain has used? The British government has said, well, we will issue a statement of regret, but we will not apologize. Now, it's important, I believe, that young people must understand what is the difference between a statement of regret and an apology. And I will give you an example. If I walk into this hall and I stepped on the foot of a student, and I say to that student, I regret stepping on your foot. What I'm saying to that student, I regret it, now go away and leave me alone. Go away. I regret it, now go away. If I give you an apology, I'm saying to you, I apologize for stepping on your foot, and I notice that your foot is bleeding. I will take the responsibility of taking you to a doctor to make sure that your foot is okay. And if I have to pay for the bandage and the surgery, I will pay for that because I have done this to you. So an apology says, I take responsibility and I will help you to return to the position that you were in before I damaged you. I take responsibility and I take care to make sure that I help you to repair the damage I have caused. But if I give you a statement of regret, I'm saying to you, I regret this, now go away and leave me alone. The matter is closed. And that is what the British government has done. A statement of regret. Now go away. We say, no. You have to give an apology to the people who are the descendants of this crime, and you have to sit at the table and help us to repair the damage that you have done to these people these last 300-400 years. And we will not budge from that. We are demanding it, we are insisting upon it. Now, we have had people in the world who have stood up on these points. Lord Gifford, who is a member of the Jamaica Reparations Commission, who sits in the House of Lords, he has gone into the British House of Lords and he has said, the British government, of which I am a member because I'm a member of the House of Lords, the British government must issue an apology to the people of Africa and their descendants, and we must pay reparations for the crimes we have committed. But he has been a lone voice. He has been a lone voice sitting in the British Parliament. And much the same way today that Mike Henry is leading that conversation in the Jamaican Parliament, Lord Gifford has been leading that conversation in the British Parliament. And when he spoke in the British Parliament, there was silence. And why was there silence? Because the vast majority of the members of the British House of Lords are the descendants of these slave owners. The vast majority of those persons sitting in the British House of Lords are the descendants of the beneficiaries of slavery. They have made their fortune out of slavery, and the slavery profits have passed down to them. And that is why they sit in the House of Lords in silence. So, what do you say about your responsibility for this moment? We can go deeper and deeper into this conversation. Take, for example, the issue of the crime against the African women. Well, first of all, the British government have said, well, slavery has existed in most cultures, in most civilizations, from the days of Christ and before there was slavery. But the facts are that no race on this planet has endured the kind of slavery that was imposed upon the African peoples. You cannot use the word slavery loosely. What we experienced was something specific. It was called chattel slavery. Chattel slavery. The word chattel in English means property. It means that you have been reduced to the status of property. You are not a human being. You are not a member of the human family. You are property. And if you are property, then you have all of the characteristics of property. What do you do with property? You can buy it, you can sell it, you can lease it, you can mortgage it, you can use it as money, you can use it as investment, you can do anything with property you wish. It is your property. And all of these African peoples who arrived in the Caribbean, this 1.2 million Africans who arrived in Jamaica, this is how they were used. So if you kill an African, if you murder an African, it was not an offense because you cannot kill property. You cannot kill property. If you rape an African woman, it's no crime because you cannot rape property. And so, these people in slavery had no recourse to justice for murder, for rape, because they were property. And you can do with your property whatever you wish. If you go to the slave market and you buy a woman off the slave market, it is your property. And her children are your property. So you can rape her. She has a child. The child is your property. You can sell her. You can sell the child. You can do with your property whatever you wish. No race in the history of humanity has experienced that kind of human degradation. It was the first occasion in the history of humanity that a people have been subject to chattel slavery in this fashion. And we have not yet recovered from that. This case is an example to all of you in Jamaica, all young people in Jamaica ought to know this story. The example of how property works. This is a case that is called the Zong case. And all of you should go on the internet and read the story of the Zong. The Zong was a slave ship on its way from Africa to Jamaica with 400 plus Africans on board. It's leaving West Africa and it's coming across the Atlantic filled with 400 plus, I think it was 470 Africans on board to be sold in Jamaica. In those days, these ships are sail ships. The wind brings them across the Atlantic. You leave Africa, you pick up the wind, and you blow your way into the Caribbean. On average, it would take about 8 to 10 weeks for a slave ship to reach the Caribbean from West Africa. The captain of this ship, Mr. Collingwood, made some navigational errors. He missed the wind, and the ship stalled in the middle of the Atlantic. After weeks and weeks, the ship is stalled in the Atlantic. It is not moving. But he has 400 plus Africans on board to sell in Jamaica. He makes a calculation. I have so much food, I have so much water, Jamaica is so many miles away, I can't make it. And so he throws 131 of them into the sea. And of course they're eaten by the sharks within a few minutes. Because in those days, the sharks used to follow the slave ships because the sharks knew that they were guaranteed. And bear in mind, the slave trade is going on for 400 years. So for 400 years, bodies are being thrown into the sea. And therefore the sharks understood that there is a source of food and protein, and they follow these slave ships across the Atlantic. They were guaranteed a supply of food. So you throw them in, and they're eaten. The ship arrived in Jamaica. Now, Mr. Collingwood goes back to England and claims the insurance on the 131 Africans he threw into the sea. Claim the insurance, and he has a right because they are only property. They are property. And if you throw your property in the sea and you are insured, you collect your insurance money. So he goes to England and he claims that he files for his insurance. The insurance company has a problem with this. Someone asked the question, surely this is a case of murder. This is a case of mass murder. You can't just throw 100 people in the sea just so. It goes to the court. It goes to the court. And the judge is going to decide whether this is a case of insurance or whether this is a case of cold-blooded mass murder. And so the judge decided this is a case of insurance. This is not a case of murder because the people thrown into the ocean are not human. And went on to say that it would have been the same had there been 131 horses. Because horses and Africans belong to the same category, property. And so Mr. Collingwood and his associates collected their insurance and the case was dismissed. Now we come to Emancipation, and this is one of the most, I think, illuminating cartoons